everyone. So my name is Timothy Smith, and this is going to be my demonstration for my college course called ITSC-1325 PC Hardware for Mr. Perez. I was given this computer. It was a donated computer from a hospital. This computer is an HP 6200 professional work computer. It was given to me with little to no parts. It is a non-functional computer. But in this demonstration, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to demonstrate how to completely disassemble this computer, how to completely reassemble this computer, including some of these parts I have on the table, as well as I'm going to demonstrate how to do a fresh install of Windows 10, do a update on the BIOS, and also how to do a fresh install of Linux as well. As you can see over here, these are some of the components that you're going to need to basically do this job. Some of the components I have here is a can of electronics duster. It's basically canned air, as well as a pair of needle nose pliers in case if you drop any kind of screws and you can't reach them, as well, and also on that topic, as well as dropping screws in the case and you can't reach them. I'm also going to be including this. It's an extending magnet in case if you can't reach any screws. Also, we have here some electronics tape. It's also known as electrical tape. This can be used to any loose wires or any kind of open wires. You just use it to tape off for safety. Some zip ties for cable management, as well as a pair of scissors to cut off the ends of the zip ties. I have here a USB drive. This USB drive is 60 gigabytes in size. This USB drive will be used as a boot drive to install either your Windows media, your Linux media, and also it can be used to put your updated BIOS on to where you can update the BIOS. The next item we have right here, this is Thermal Grizzly. It's 1 gram of thermal paste. Later on in the video, I'll show you exactly what this is used for. Then we have a magnet for any loose screws that you pull out of the case to where they all stay in one place and don't go rolling all over the place. Now this magnet is, as you can see on the back of it, it has a picture of my screwdriver. So this screwdriver I will include in the description below. This screwdriver is called a Power Giant. It's an electronic screwdriver that has a left and a right turn, as well as an LED light at the end. This is the case that comes with the screwdriver. So it comes with a housing for the screwdriver, as well as double-sided screw bits. So it comes with all kinds of shapes and sizes of different screws that you will need to construct a PC. And then over here we have some of the basic cleaning necessities. So I do have a microfiber cloth. This is used to clean off any residue of thermal paste that's on the CPU, as well as some 70% alcohol. This is just typical home rubbing alcohol that can be used to remove the thermal paste. You don't want to use water. Anything like that will damage electronic components. You want to always make sure it's alcohol. If you don't have rubbing alcohol, I did include this. This is basically a lens wipe. It's a cleaning wipe for eyeglasses, but this wipe is also alcohol as well. So if you don't have rubbing alcohol, you can use lens cleaning wipes as well. Then over here we have 2 different sizes of RAM. So we do have a 2 gigabyte, a 2 gigabyte, and then 2 4 gigabyte sticks of RAM. This is DDR3 RAM, as well as a CPU cooler and the fan for the CPU. So as you can see here, I have 2 different types of hard drives. I have a 3.5 inch HDD hard drive, and I have 2 2.5 inch HDD hard drives. For this build, you can use either an HDD hard drive or an SSD hard drive. It really doesn't matter, but for the sakes of this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and use these 2 different types of hard drives. So when working inside of PC cases, it's usually pretty dark. So this, I like to use this headlamp because it does have 3 different light modes. Just one light, it has a dim mode, and then it has a blinking mode. This you can use to put around your head, and you still have access to both of your hands to where you can still work inside of the case at the same time. So now we're going to go ahead and travel to the case. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start beginning to work inside of the PC case. So for this build, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use my screwdriver. I have 2 separate bits that are most commonly used in computers. So I have one bit right here. This is a Phillips size 1 bit that I'm going to use. This is a T15 size bit. I'm going to use this as well. This is typically used for motherboard screws. So I'm going to be using those 2 size bits. Now to begin to open the case, there is a thumb screw right here on the side. This screw, you're just going to want to go ahead and twist it off. This screw comes completely out. You can just set that to the side for right now. And then we're going to go ahead and lift up this door panel to the case. We can set that to the side. Now looking inside the computer, you can see here that there are quite a bit of things missing already so far. So for starters, we are missing a hard drive. We are missing the cooler for the CPU. The CPU has no thermal paste on it right now. And we are missing the RAM. So for starters, what we're going to start by doing is we're going to start by disconnecting something starting here at the top. So at the top, this is the DVD drive tray. This is for CD-ROMs and like discs and things like that. So you're going to want to start by disconnecting these 2 cords right here. So what you can do, since you went ahead and disconnected these, is you can go ahead and follow them and disconnect them from the motherboard as well, since there's no connection. So as you can see down in there, this connection right here, it actually has a tab on it. So what we can do is we can just push on the tab and then pull up. So I'll show you again right here. So the connection, you can see it has a tab right there on the side that you can push on as you pull out. So we'll set that off to the side for right now. The computer case has these tabs on the side, these 3 green tabs right here. Those 3 tabs can be used to move out of the way to where you can access the front panel. Eyes in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand. As you can see now, the front case, or the front cover to the case, is completely removed. This is where you can show things where you can see the power switch, which, let me see if I can put it up right here. So the power switch is located right here, as well as 4 USB ports. These are all USB-A ports. There are 2.0 ports. They're also located right here in the front of the case, as you can see. And as well as you have your headphone and microphone jack, and just a standalone headphone jack. So this can all be disconnected with inside the computer case. Now as we work inside the case, we got a couple things disconnected, but what we're going to want to do is we're always going to want to make sure that we stick with ESD, or electronic static discharge. So as you notice, as I'm going through a lot of this with you, that my hands are always staying on the chassis of the computer case. So you want to make sure that your hand is grounded to any piece of metal, because your body does have an electronic static discharge that can ruin components inside the computer. If not, they do sell an ESD wrist strap that you can wear. But in my case, I'm just going to want to make sure that I just always stay touching the chassis to where I don't shock any case parts. So the next part of what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and disconnect those front components that I was talking about a minute ago. So that these connections right here, they're for the USB, for the audio jacks, as well as the power switch. The power switch is this colored cable right here, this white, red, and green cable. So we're going to go ahead and reach in here and go ahead and disconnect this one from the motherboard. So as you can see there, we go ahead and take that one off. I'm just going to go ahead and follow the red and black cable right here to the motherboard and go ahead and disconnect that as well. Okay, so now that we have that disconnected, we're going to go ahead and travel right here to these front panel connections. So as you can see here, once I remove the first one, so you can see this is a yellow connection on the end, and it has a yellow connection on the motherboard. So it's actually very easy to distinguish where it goes. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all 3. And that one's green. Remove this one as well. And that one's blue. So all these cables, we can just go ahead and set them outside of the chassis for right now. So now we're going to come down to this loose cable right here on the very side. So these 2 cables right here, these are to connect your hard drive. So these 2 cables, since they're not currently connected to a hard drive, we're going to go ahead and follow them and disconnect them from the motherboard as well.
it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light.
What's next right now is we're going to completely remove the power supply. So this power supply right here, you can see there's cables coming out. This is a non-modular power supply, so everything is built into the power supply. So we're just going to go ahead and follow the cords and just go ahead and remove everything from the motherboard.
Shine through, if you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you.
There you go. Okay, so everything is removed, as you can see, from the power supply. So now I'm actually going to walk you through how to extract the power supply from the chassis itself. So looking back here on the case, this is where the power supply is located right here. These are the T15 screws right here, these 4 screws. So once these screws are removed, the power supply in theory will basically be able to just come straight out. So basically, to remove it, what I'm doing is I'm putting my hand in the back right here where I remove the screws, and I'm putting my hand right here, and I'm basically gonna like teeter-totter it and like kind of lift it up this way. So we're just gonna pull in like opposite directions right there, just like that. So once that's done, the power supply is completely removed. There you go. And so now you can take the power supply and you can set this off to the side for right now. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to remove this fan right here, and we're going to go ahead and disconnect this connection right here from the motherboard. We can actually do that now. And this is the fan connection right here, this brown connection, so we can pull that out as well. So now the fan is completely disconnected. We're going to go ahead and unscrew the fan just so that way we have more room to work to where we can pull the motherboard out. As you can see here, there is 4 Phillips head screws right there. We're just going to want to go ahead and undo all 4 of those, and the fan will essentially come out. So when I'm removing these screws, what I make sure to do all the time is I put my hand inside the chassis and I hold my hand on the fan as I remove the screws, just to make sure that the fan doesn't fall into the case.
I'm on my own, broken alone. I feel the rain crashing down. All around this empty town, I'm searching for the lost and found. But you don't care, you're unaware. Keep moving like the scars aren't even there. It's in the air like a blazing flare.
For starters, to remove the motherboard has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 screws that are holding this in. So we just need to remove all 8 screws, and then we will go from there. Okay, so this is actually a good example of what I was talking about earlier when I was saying dropping screws into the case. So as you can see there, I unscrewed that screw right there, and how it's loose now, well, my bit isn't magnetic, so I can't pick it up, and it's in a kind of a tight spot. So in this case, this is when I'm going to go ahead and use my magnetic pin, and I just reach in there and use that to grab the screw.
Kiss your head when you cried for me. Hold your hand while the pain was over. Keep you warm by the roaring sea. You meant the world to me.
Okay. That was the last screw. So now we should in theory be able to remove the motherboard. So What we're going to go ahead and do from here, we do have the connections right here for different things such as USB, VGA, different things like that. So the way to remove a motherboard is you're going to want to go ahead and kind of lift at an angle. You're not going to want to just pull it straight up because you will break a lot of these connections right here. So we're going to go ahead and lift from this side. And as you can see, it has how it tilts. We're going to go ahead and grab right here, move it out, and we have a motherboard. There we go. So now the PC case is completely empty. So with this, we're going to go ahead and set this off to the side and move on to the motherboard. Okay, so now moving on to the motherboard. So what we're going to go ahead and work on first is we're going to pay attention to the CPU. So as you can see right here with the CPU, there's little tiny bits of thermal paste still on there. You can really see it good here with the cooler. So this is residue of the thermal paste that was on there before, all those gray smudges. So in order to remove that, this is whenever we're going to go back to our 70% rubbing alcohol. And we're going to go ahead and use our rubbing alcohol as well as our microfiber cloth. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get it wet, and I just roll it around my finger like so. Now going onto the CPU. So as you can see now, all the thermal paste is completely removed from the cooler. So now we're going to go ahead and put the alcohol away. I am going to go ahead and demonstrate how to carefully and very gently remove and reinstall a CPU. So as you can see here on the CPU, there's a metal arm that goes right here along the side of the CPU. This, you're just going to want to go ahead and move it away from the CPU as such, and then lift upwards like so. There you go. And that pop, that means that all the pins have officially released from each other. So you can go ahead and lift out the CPU. Now this part, you're going to want to be very careful and not touch the bottom, because as you can see here on the bottom, all those gold pins, all those little tiny holes right there. So AMD CPUs, as you can see here, let me show you this way. As you can see here, it's an AMD CPU. AMD CPUs have the gold pins on the CPU itself, and Intel CPUs have the gold pins actually on the motherboard, and the CPU is completely flat. So now I'm going to show you how to insert the CPU. So most CPUs, they have this little gold triangle right here. So that gold triangle, you're going to want to go ahead and match it up to the corner right here of the socket on the motherboard. You can see kind of that there's like a little white arrow and a little white dot right there. So you're just going to want to match the gold triangle up with that corner. And this is the part where you just be very gentle as to not, so that way you don't bend the pins, and it just sits in place right there. To test it and make sure that it's fully in place, you can kind of give it like a little wiggle and make sure it doesn't move around. And then from here, you're going to want to go ahead and lower back the arm again. And you're going to want to take the arm and push it off to the side and down. There you go. So now the CPU is fully installed. Okay, so now to apply the thermal paste, I have right here my 1 gram of Thermal Grizzly, as well as it came with this little spatula to spread the thermal paste evenly. So most people, when they apply thermal paste, they will go ahead and do this, and they will put a small little pea-sized dot like so onto the CPU. We're going to go ahead and start with that, but I'm going to make sure I use the spatula, and I'm going to go ahead and spread it evenly all over the CPU. Okay, now that the thermal paste has been applied, what we're going to move on to next is installing the RAM. So RAM can be installed several different ways, also depending on the amount of RAM you have. So for this particular motherboard, it's white before black. However, I do have 4 sticks of RAM that I'm going to be fully installing, which totals out to 12 gigabytes of RAM. So to install them, these little side levers right here, you just need to make sure each side you move them out of the way. And then you're individually going to go ahead and grab your RAM. So the RAM sticks, as you can see, there's this little notch right here on the slot for the RAM. That little tiny notch right there, you're going to match it up with the key on the RAM where the notch is missing. So you want to go ahead and match it up just like this. And then you're going to want to go ahead and make sure it's seated correctly. You will hear 2 clicks once it's seated correctly. Just like that. So you're going to want to go through and do that with every stick of RAM. And we have 4 successful installed sticks of RAM. So from here, what we're going to go ahead and do is we are actually going to move this motherboard back into the computer and start reassembly. Okay, so before we put the motherboard in, we're actually going to go ahead and take this cord and this connection right here, and we're going to just take it out so that way we have more room. So in order to do so, I'll show you here on the back side. On the back side right here, there's a green tab right here. So you can lift that outwards like that. And then this will come completely out like so. There you go. So just to kind of get it out of the way for right now, so we can install the motherboard. Now, installing the motherboard works the opposite way of removing the motherboard. So how we decided to lift up from this end and pull out, now we're going in and pushing down. So all these connections here you can see on the side, all these like the VGA and everything else right here, you're going to want to make sure that you line them up with these connection ports right here on the outside of the case. So you're going to want to make sure it's the correct orientation. Now also what I'm using as a guide, you can see right here where the CPU is. When I set it down, you can see where the hole is on the PC's chassis. So you can see if I lift it up, you can't see it, but there it is right there. So I'm just lining everything up like so. Okay. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to go ahead and start screwing in the motherboard screws. So now from here, we have all 8 motherboard screws installed successfully. So what I'm going to go ahead and do from here is I'm going to actually reinstall this connection right here. So to reinstall this connection, what we're going to go ahead and do is we are going to work from the inside, and we're going to put this little tab right here. We're going to go ahead and put this down first, like so, and then we're going to make sure that we there we go. So as you can see now, it's completely seated, but we want to lock it in place. So we come right back here on the outside, and we're just going to go ahead and lift this panel back up and snap it like that. So now we come in here, and we're going to reconnect this. So in order to do the reconnection, as you can see here, there's a little white spot right there. That shows that it's pretty much like going to be keyed in one direction. The connection is going to be right here next to all these connections. It's going to be this long one. And as you can see, one of the pins is missing. Go bring this in like so. Make sure that is seated properly. So there you go. There's that one. So now from here, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall my fan. So to reinstall the fan, one thing I always learned that I think is kind of funny still to this day is that you always want to know that faces suck on a fan. So the face of a fan sucks. So this direction is going to suck air, and it's basically going to exhaust the air outside of the case. So it's just something to remember so you know which orientation to place your fan. So from here, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and connect it first. As you can see, it's also going to be keyed one way. So we're going to go ahead and key the fan connection right here to this brown connection. Like so. There you go. And then we're going to go ahead and insert the fan. So we're going to move to the back side right here. I'm going to go ahead and switch bits. Okay. And we're going to sit the fan on there. And then from here, we're just going to start lightly stirring in one corner. So I'm going to tighten it. I'm going to tighten it a little bit, not too much, just to kind of get it on there. And then same way you would do with a tire, you're going to want to move diagonally, not in a circle. Now you have a successfully installed fan. So now from here, almost everything is kind of looking good. So we're going to go ahead from here. The next step I want to do is I want to install the cooler for the CPU. Installing the cooler, it goes one direction like so. This notch up here at the top, the reason for it is because we do have the cooler right here, the fan right here. So when this fan gets seated onto the cooler, there's actually a notch right here that's going to fall into the notch on the cooler like so. So we're going to install this piece first. So for this part, you just want to be careful because of the wet thermal paste that you have applied. Just go ahead and gently sit it on there. And same thing for the fan goes for this. You're going to want to do it in a star pattern just to make sure you get an even tightening. that piece is installed. So now we're going to go ahead and install the fan. So for the fan, as you can see looking in, the connection is over here in the corner. It's going to be that brown connection, and you're just going to go ahead and connect the same fan connection as you did with the fan over here. So same thing, it gets keyed in one direction. And you want to go ahead and line up the fan here. And then there you go. So now the fan is completely seated properly, as you can see. And if you look up here, these plastic pieces right here, these are actually built-in cable management. So that is actually for these cables right here that we installed first earlier. What we're going to do is we're actually going to go ahead and lift this up and move it out of the way for right now. Because as you can see, there's actually a CPU power connection right there that we need to get to when we install the power supply. So installing the power supply, pretty much the same thing as taking it out. You're going to want to make sure it's oriented in the same exact way that you took it out. You're going to want to go ahead and set this in here. There we go. So now as you can see, the power supply is seated, but we do still need to tighten up the screws back here. Okay, so now that we have the power supply installed, we're going to go ahead and start connecting it. So we have a 6-pin right here. So this is going to go over here to the 6-pin connection right here. So again, kind of the same thing. You just want to make sure, because these connections, they get keyed all one way. There you go. And then this connection right here is labeled P2. This connection is actually going to go behind that one that we just installed. Same thing, gets keyed one direction. So I'm going to slip in here. There we go. That's installed. So now what we're going to want to do is connect this 4-pin right here. So this is the one that's over here by the cooler that I had mentioned. That's the reason why we lifted it up out of the way. Again, same thing, connects one direction. There you go. So now that this is connected, what we're going to do is we're going to actually go ahead and lower the cooler. What we're going to do from here is we're going to go ahead and install the front connectors. I'm going to connect it right there. Just like so. Okay. That's the power switch right there. Okay. There you go. It's seated. So that's connected. Now you're just going to kind of tuck those right there. Now you're going to move on to these connections. The first one we're going to go ahead and connect is the blue connection. Okay. Then we're going to work to the green. Okay. Then we are going to go ahead and do the yellow. So now I'm going to go ahead and tuck a lot of these cables in right here into the built-in cable management up here at the top. I'm going to go ahead and connect the yellow connection. There you go. Okay. So all of that is now connected. I go ahead and pull this speaker wire tight right here. Okay. There we go. So all the front panel connections are now connected. Power supply is connected. Only thing left to connect now is a hard drive. So I'm going to go ahead and just insert the hard drive. As you can see right here, it is kind of moving around. So A lot of times what you can do is you can use double-sided tape or anything like that, especially if you don't have a hard drive tray to slip it into. For right now, I'm just going to kind of leave it loose, and then I'll come back later on and I'll fix it. So the first connection we're going to go with is this one right here. So this is a SATA connection. We're going to go ahead and plug this into the first SATA port right here, like so. We're going to go ahead and plug this one into the small part of the connection right here. Like that. Okay. And then we're going to come in and bring this one. This is the connection that has two separate connections right here. This end is going to go over here. Again, this gets keyed one direction. So we'll plug that one in. And we're going to go ahead and where it says P4, because it comes before P5, we're going to go ahead and connect this one to the hard drive right here. Like so. Now we're going to connect this disk drive up here, and it'll be the last thing we need to connect. So again, we're going to go with the SATA connection. This is going to go into the next available slot. There you go. And then we're going to go ahead and come over here, and we're going to connect this to the small connection on the disk drive. There you go. Now we're going to connect this connection. I'm going to go ahead and connect it up here first. There you go, that's connected. And then you're going to come over here and connect it right here. There you go. So now the next step, what we're going to do, this is where your zip ties come in handy. You're going to go ahead and just take some zip ties. All these loose cables right here, you're going to kind of bundle them up as best you can. Slip a zip tie in there. Just do some kind of cleaning up here and do some nice cable management.
Yeah. Unknown Brain. Marvin Devine. I'm saying bye to all the lies and all the times you cried, saying that I wasn't right, yet I was right by your side. You manipulator, playing games, your friends commentators, and I don't know what you say about our private conversations, but it's got them hating. Thanks to all the rumors you be claiming. It's cool, I'm done with you, so they can throw you a celebration. You gon' hate it when you see me with somebody living better. I'm trying to tell you that me just...
Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put the panels back on and demonstrate what it looks like all put together. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to install the front panel, like we did before. Go ahead and pop that into place like so. There you go. So that's the front panel connection. Now I'm going to go ahead and lay this down again. And now we're going to go ahead and install the side panel. Go ahead and put this down and in. There you go. Now from here, you just take your little thumb screw, and there's a hole right here. You just go ahead and insert your thumb screw right there. Make sure you tie it tight. And there you go. That is one official disassembled and reassembled computer. Next step is I'm going to go ahead and take you into installing a Windows operating system, updating this BIOS, and then installing Linux. Stay tuned.